A long time ago, before even your grandfather's father was born, there was a boy named Robinson Crusoe who lived in the town of York. Though he never saw the sea until he was much older, he always dreamed of becoming a sailor and visiting distant, unknown lands. He believed that if he could sail away, he would be truly happy. But Robinson's father wanted him to become a lawyer. He often spoke to Robinson about the dangers of going to sea and how people who stayed at home were usually the happiest. He also reminded Robinson about his brother, who had gone off to war and had been killed. Reluctantly, Robinson promised to give up his dream of sailing. But just a few days later, the longing returned. He asked his mother to convince his father to let him go on one voyage. However, his mother became angry, and his father said, "If he goes abroad, he will be the most miserable person alive. I will not give my permission." So Robinson stayed at home for another year, until he turned 19, always thinking about the sea. One day, he went to Hull, a city by the sea, to say goodbye to a friend who was going to London. He couldn't resist the temptation and secretly boarded his friend's ship without telling his parents. At first, Robinson was seasick and scared as the wind picked up and the waves grew higher. He promised himself that if he ever got back on land, he would go home and never leave again. But when the weather calmed and the sun came out, Robinson soon forgot about his promise and began to enjoy the trip. His friend and the sailors laughed at him for being afraid, and he soon forgot all about returning home. After a few days, their ship reached Yarmouth Roads, where they had to anchor and wait for a good wind. In those days, ships only used sails, so if the wind was calm or blowing in the wrong direction, they had to wait. While they were waiting in Yarmouth, a terrible storm arrived. The ship was in danger of sinking, and they had to cut away the masts to stop it from rolling so much. The captain fired cannons to signal for help. A boat from another ship came to rescue Robinson and the rest of the crew just before their ship sank, leaving them stranded on the shore, soaked and without clothes except for what they wore. Robinson still had some money in his pocket, so he decided to go to London. He didn't want to return home, afraid his parents would laugh at him. In London, Robinson made friends with a captain who had recently returned from the Guinea coast of Africa. The captain had made a lot of money there and persuaded Robinson to join him on his next voyage. Robinson brought toys, beads, and other items to trade with the African natives. In exchange, he received gold dust and thought he would soon make a fortune. But this voyage was not as lucky. One morning, they spotted a ship that seemed to be a pirate ship. The pirate ship quickly caught up to Robinson's, which was smaller and had fewer guns. The pirates took over the ship, capturing Robinson and the crew, who were still alive, and forced them to work for them. The pirate captain made Robinson his personal servant, forcing him to dig in the garden, work in the house, and sometimes care for the ship when it was in port. However, he never took Robinson on any voyages. For 2 years, Robinson lived like this, unhappy and always thinking of ways to escape. One day, the pirate captain began going out fishing more often, taking Robinson and a black boy named Zuri with him. On one of these trips, the captain gave Robinson the task of preparing food, water, guns, and ammunition for a fishing trip. However, at the last minute, the captain's friends couldn't come, so Robinson was told to go with a servant along with Zuri. Robinson saw this as his chance to escape. He convinced the servant to bring more food and water, saying that they shouldn't take what was meant for their master. Then he also asked for extra guns and ammunition because they might need them for hunting birds. After sailing about a mile, they stopped to fish. But Robinson pretended he wasn't catching anything and suggested they should sail farther out. When they were far enough away from shore that no one could see them, Robinson waited for the right moment. While the servant wasn't looking, Robinson pushed him overboard, knowing that the servant could swim back to land. With the servant out of the way, Robinson sailed south along the coast with Xury. He didn't know where they were heading, but he only cared about escaping the pirates and gaining his freedom. After many days and nights of sailing, they reached the Cape Verde area. There, they encountered a Portuguese ship, which took them aboard. Although Robinson couldn't speak Portuguese, the crew treated him kindly. When the ship finally arrived in Brazil, Robinson had enough money to buy a plantation. He grew sugar and tobacco there for 4 years and was happy for a while, earning a good living. However, Robinson soon grew restless again. One day, some of his neighbors asked if he would help them get workers from the Guinea coast. Robinson agreed, making sure he would be paid for his trouble and would bring back some workers to help on his plantation. 12 days after the ship set sail, a terrible storm blew them off course. Huge waves crashed over the deck, sweeping away anything that could move. A man and a boy were washed overboard and drowned. Everyone feared they would be lost. After the storm passed, another even worse one arrived. The wind howled, and rain and spray filled the air. The next morning, land appeared in the distance, but the ship struck a sandbank. The sails were torn apart, and the ship was pounded by waves, breaking apart near the deck. In the chaos, the last remaining boat was lowered, and everyone scrambled to get aboard. But just before they could reach shore, a giant wave struck the boat, capsizing it. Robinson was a good swimmer, but no one could survive such a storm. By pure luck, he was washed ashore, battered by the waves, but still alive. Finally, Robinson managed to escape the water and ran to safety. He was the only survivor from the ship,